All right, welcome everybody. Thank you everybody for joining us today for the SCS ESD Event Detection webinar. I am joined by Mr. Will de la Isla, who is our Latin America Sales Manager. My name is Henry Salgado. I'm the SCS Sales Manager. Will?
Hey, nice to be here today.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Long time no see. It's been a while.
Been a while, maybe a day.
Maybe a day. You were in Mexico yesterday, so you were actually seeing customers. Awesome. Very good. Very good. Well, just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We highly encourage everybody to ask a lot of questions. We do have a taskbar on the GoToWebinar on the right side. You can type in your question as we go. We do tend to get a lot of questions during these webinars, so we'll make sure that we follow up with everybody via email. We do get your email address and your name when you register, so we'll make sure that we get your questions answered. We will be breaking for questions as we go through the webinar, so don't worry. We will stop and ask your questions as we go through. But this is for you all, so we want to make sure that you guys ask plenty of questions just to make sure that that we get them all taken care of. So as you see on your screen, there are some webcams. If you go up to the webcam icon there in the middle of your screen, go ahead and click on active webcams. That way you can see the PowerPoint presentation that we'll be going through. You can see a view of our handsome faces here, and you will also see a view of the monitors and the test equipment that we will be demonstrating for you today as well. Okay, so as we get started, we understand that there's different levels of knowledge of people with knowledge in the audience. We have our ESD professionals like Will, who's been doing this for about 30 years.
30 years this May.
30 years this May. We're not going to give away his age, but his beard might. But we also have younger ESD coordinators or ESD coordinators who were maybe voluntold that they're going to be ESD coordinators. They don't know a ton about ESD, so we're going to keep it basic, but we're also going to try and get technical as well. So first question, what is ESD? So the technical answer to that is ESD is a rapid spontaneous transfer of electrostatic charge induced by a high electrostatic field through a spark between two bodies at a different electrostatic potential. That's a mouthful. So what is ESD, Will?
That is, just to make it comfortable for everybody, we have all experienced it. I think over the years growing up, everybody understands going to school and walking across a carpet, touching the doorknob. That's the simple term. That's a way we have all created an ESD event and have felt an ESD event. We've all gone through ESD basics. In order to fill an ESD event is somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 volts. So we'll get into a little bit more about if you could fill it, an ESD event like that, what does a component fill and what the specific thresholds are for damaging a circuit. So we'll get into more of that, but I just want to we'll get it into layman's terms and try to make it basic, but also give you some technical knowledge on what happens when you have an ESD event, what creates an ESD event, how you could control the process of creating an ESD event too. So we've all, like I said, we've all felt it, walked across a rug, getting out of your car, your clothing, separating from the chair, you touch the gas pump. There's other, a dryer, the friction that causes it with different type of materials. We've all kind of seen it. So we'll kind of get in it. How does it affect my work environment? But those are other ways where you could actually, a lightning bolt is another example. But we'll get a little bit more into it. We want to make it comfortable for everybody. We do have probably very experienced people in the industry, but we also have to bring it back down to have you guys understand how it gets created and how we're going to resolve it. So
perfect. That's good. So we'll also be talking about the different ESD models, charge device model, machine model, and the human body model as well. So let's move on. Okay, Will, so why don't you tell us a little bit about human body model and charge device model?
These are the ones we kind of going to focus on today, having the equipment and the demos here. We're going to do some live demos, but simple human body model. If we're not grounded, or if we are grounded and we have a static field induced, we become the ESD event by touching the product, or that's something that's not maybe protected. A CDM is metal to metal. We're going to do some examples of that, but this kind of gives you an illustration or examples of how the charges a human body could cause an ESD event in your work environment. CDM is probably one of the biggest causes also for ESD events in the work environment. So I think we do a better job in actually showing the video. I think that's kind of showing the demos of exactly what happened. And we have some nice diagrams right now to show you what really it is.
So when I started doing this about 4 years ago, I think the only thing I knew about ESD was probably how to spell it.
You have no problem with that.
I needed some remedial training on that as well. But more, when I first started, it was more about the human body. Everybody was so worried about the human body, which is understandable. But as we've progressed through the years, even since I've been here, it seems like it's more relevant now. CDM is more relevant. Our end users, our customers are looking on ways to be able to monitor that and be able to troubleshoot that, right?
Well, and that's the thing that I started 30 years ago, and we didn't have equipment like this that we're going to show. What the 3M static control acquisition that Desco Industries Inc. acquired a few years ago, really, when they designed some of this equipment, we're going to go over the ESD Pro, the EMI, and the EM Aware. They really were ahead of their time. And in some cases, a lot of manufacturers weren't ready to know what was really happening on the work.
Wanted to know, maybe.
Wanted to. Yeah. Now with 4.0, we are really getting into, we have to know what's happening in order to control it. And when you have equipment that documents and tells you when there's a problem, now we're really getting more control of the work environment. We're educating our customers, and it's showing what we're doing. We're making products that are smaller. Customers are making smaller products that are more sensitive to ESD events. But in order to control that, you need this type of equipment to validate the process. So
makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
So here's some quick examples of a human body model. As you see in the diagram here, it's basically a discharge from a charged person to a device. So as they're working with device, if it has a static charge and they're grounded, you can have a basic example of a human body model as you see in the diagram.
So if I'm walking across the floor and I've got a charge built up on me and I touch this board here, then that's going to be
it's possible. The other part is the circuit board could be charged and you're grounded and you're causing the charge there. So there's different parts of the ESD process that's going to avoid that. But that's basically the human body model. Machine model that, we're not going to get too much into, obviously we don't have machinery, but it's when, maybe robotics or SMT lines, metal to metal contact. A lot of people, they change maybe the nozzle tips and make it dissipated to slow down the transfer of energy. So that is not something we're going to focus on today, but charge device model is the other thing. Is you have components coming in dip tubes, maybe they're not dissipated, maybe they're insulated, and as they drop them onto the work environment, creating a charge and discharging to the work environment or conductive field. So that's kind of an illustration. So we'll go a little bit over those again. Same kind of illustration. Now, how does this compute in your work environment? As we talked about, as your circuit boards get smaller, they're more sensitive, so you have different classes. And you can see here, now that we could document the type of energy we're creating through ESD events, class 0, less than 250 volts. And in some cases, we've gone into very high-end companies where 25 volts is the limit. So we got to be really careful, but how do you manage that process if you don't know how to?
If you don't have the quantifiable data, right?
Data, right? Okay. So we'll get into that, and you'll see in some of the videos here some of the equipment we're going to be using. Okay. So here's a better illustration for those more technical that understand energy transfer and how the current goes from the basic static on the product back down to ground. So this is kind of more of an illustration, and this PowerPoint is also going to be available to you at your request. So so you could have more time to go over it, and we'll go over any questions you have. But I want to give a more detailed illustration of what really happens.
It's a good visual.
Yeah, like for you engineer types. Again, here, there's another one we're talking about, the dip tube, creating static buildup on the component, dropping it on the conductive work environment. You'll see the transfer of energy and kind of the pulse rate on the diagram there. So for you technical guys, again, this is a good illustration of what happens, and then we'll move on from there. We'll do some live demos. Okay, now we'll get into some of the equipment. I'll move this out of the way. We'll kind of focus on this particular unit. This is what we call the game changer. Okay, this has really changed the way we actually go out and service our customers, how we were able to kind of educate them on what's happening currently in their work environment. This product not only will tell you the event, it will tell you the energy that it was happened under. So what I'm going to do is, I have a conductive plate here. If all you can see, it's grounded, and if I put a charge, which I have a charging device, I could put a charge on the plate, and you'll see the voltage go up. So it's a 262 ESD event of voltage and made about 2 events. So this is documented. The beautiful thing about this EMI is that not only does it tell you, you could set the ranges of where you perceive the event is happening. So what do we do as an ESD supplier? We look for areas where there's a lot of contact and separation in the work environment, metal to metal contact. So what we do is we place this unit near that part of the process to validate that. What was the other what we're talking about? It also, again, a lot of the benefits for this too is that it has an SD microchip, so we can actually document all the timestamp, the date, the event, and all that information. So this is really a big.
And so this tool could be utilized for those of you that don't know, to get test results on a workstation, or you can actually utilize this in an SMT line. We have an antenna that Will's about to show you right now that can be used inside an SMT line to see if there's any ESD events. Some of the main places that we utilize this is in a pick and place machine, conveyor areas, transfer areas. Will's going to actually put the antenna on right now, and you'll be able to see what that looks like. So we can put this inside of an SMT line and see if there's any ESD events that are occurring in there. So this is one of the tools that really differentiates SCS from everybody else, and from any type of traditional surveys that are done, is that we can actually verify and validate that the process is working. So just to give you an idea, Will talked about the card, the internal micro SD card that shows the data. Here's an example on the next screen here. Here's some of the data that looks like. On the left side of the screen, you'll see this is just raw data here, and it'll tell you the time that the event happened. It'll tell you on the far left side how many events occurred, and then on the far right side, it'll tell you a magnitude, the magnitude of the actual event that happened. So it pegs out at what, 999 volts. So if you see here, here's a result. Will and I, back in 2016, went out and we conducted an EOS ESD assessment that SCS offers to its customers. And we were in Tijuana, Mexico. We went into an aerospace contract manufacturer, and the gentleman informed us that he'd be more than happy to allow us to utilize the EMI, but he didn't think we were going to find anything because it was a brand new line. It was a top of the line SMT machine. And so we said, okay, no problem. So we put the EMI in there for about, what was it, 35, 45 minutes?
At least, and what we do is as a ESD experts, we'll set this up with a remote cable. We'll leave it inside the machine or in an area we feel there's a contact and separation. A lot of people, there's some grounding issues sometimes between the SMT line and the conveyor. A lot of times they're connected, what we found out there, different potential grounds.
Correct.
So the transfer of energy from the board, from the actual conveyors was causing a lot of the events. They would have never seen it without the EMI and the data that we were able to capture there.
So we were walking back and forth while we were taking other measurements that we do with the EOS ESD assessment, and we would see that this gentleman kept walking by and his eyes kept getting big as he walked by. So we came back, we provided the results from that EOS ESD assessments, and as you can see here, there was quite a bit of events, and there was multiple events that were over 1,000 volts. So needless to say, like Will talked about, we found out it was a grounding issue, different grounding potentials. We were able to fix the problem for our customer, and he was happy after that.
And a lot of it is process. A lot of times what we found is some people wore one heel ground, and are inspecting the board.
Correct.
They're not wearing the wrist strap, so they feel that they have a smock and that they're totally protected. But if their equal potential is different,
that's right.
What happens? So this meter really tells you what's really happening in real time in the work environment. So and a lot of people are afraid to know what's going on, but if you don't know and track the data, you cannot report on it and you can't fix your problem. So
that's right.
This is kind of some of the great features that this product has.
Correct.
So let's go over a little bit about the different options. So kind of good, better, best. One thing SCS does really well. Here is the ESD Pro.
One thing, we do a lot of things really well.
We are the world's best.
That's right. That's right. The solution. Don't forget.
So this is the ESD Pro. This has LEDs that are really, they don't tell you the intensity of the ESD event, but you could set up the sensitivity, and you can see the LEDs. I could set up the sensitivity if I wanted to read a lower intensity or a higher one, and then it'll beep and let me know what's happening. So this is widely used by some of our ESD coordinators, and people like Ted Dangamar really likes this meter. It's very portable. It kind of gives you an idea where things are happening. So what I'll do is, again, using my charger, I could place and it'll sense the event and see what's happening. Another thing would be you could actually has a noise filter. A lot of times, if there's a machine running in the background, the internal ESD events that are happening in an enclosed environment, it could pick up. So you could filter out some of the noises like that, like a blow dryer or something like that happens. To give you an example of something that's being created internally, but not on the product. So that's this particular meter. And going back to the difference between this is you actually see the intensity of the voltage, and everything's programmable. So I could set the threshold from here from 20 volts to see 40 or 50. I could change the settings here. You could actually set the distance of where you perceive the event as being happening, the mode of CDM. So this product is definitely the product any ESD coordinator should have, because if you're looking to not only have an ESD plan, you need to validate that the plan is working. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. Where we go, then we're going to go and talk about the EM aware, which is really a step above. If you're not only serious about your ESD program, you want to document everything that happens. It would be the EM aware. Now, what are the difference between this? If you could see a static field meter, just to give you kind of an example. Okay, I have a static field meter. Now, we can measure events with the ESD Pro. We can measure events with the EMI, but static is the main culprit, right? So we have static on this, right, over 300-400 volts, right? On the EM aware, not only can we read, and you can see the EMI, there's no static, it just tells you the events. You can look at the software here too. You can see that it'll also measure over 1,000 volts of static. Now, and you can see the opposite potential here. Now, what I'll do is now the difference between these two and the EM Aware is that we could actually track what's created during the process. If there's a static buildup, we know we have a potential problem for ESD event, correct? With the EMI and the ESD Pro, we're just measuring event detection.
So these are more for these two are more for a ESD coordinator who is performing, like we would perform the EOS ESD assessment, but if they're doing an internal audit, this is test equipment, right? Okay, so this is, and the EM Aware, we're talking about more of a continuous 24/7, 7 days
watching the process, and part of the process is, okay, one thing is realizing that you have an ESD event, and these meters are going to tell you, okay, here's part of my process. What's creating the problem?
Right.
So what the EM Aware does, you can track from beginning of the process to the end where the static voltage is being created. So if I'm moving two things, and you can see this on the software, it goes over 1,000 volts. No ESD is created yet, right?
Yes.
And then I will charge the conductive side, and you can see the meter went up because I created what do you call this, metal contact, right? So a CDM contact. So then that's what we're trying to really show, is that we could register events, but the EM Aware will actually track where the static problem is. If something's generating a static, if we could remove that from being created, right, then we really have the source of the problem. We could control that and then limit the events that are created after that.
Very good. Very good.
So, okay, I think we'll go to our next. I think, what was our next?
We have, I believe we have some questions. First of all, let's go with this one. So can you answer, does the EMI detect static?
Oh yeah, we just went through that. That's it. Again, let's go over that. So the EMI does not detect static.
Okay.
What the EMI would register is the energy of the event only.
Okay.
So as I showed you, I could rub these two together, go over the EMI, and there's nothing registered until there's actually an event. So that's a very good question.
Okay. Let's see. Does the EMI record all readings?
Yes, it'll record all the events you have, readings, the date, and you could actually kind of see it here. It's on screen too, if I could get my fingers out. So if you see here, it'll register the actual event and the time and date. So that is the beautiful part of that. So as we put all of these, so that is the difference between the ESD Pro. Again, will not record or register anything. The EMI will. Okay.
Okay. And I think that's the only question. I thought I heard somebody at the door real quick. Let's see. That's who it was. So look who was knocking at the door here. Come on in, Miranda. For those of you who don't know, who don't watch the series, Minute with Miranda, have a seat. How are you?
I'm good. How are
This
you?
is Miranda. She does a series that we do. It's called A Minute with Miranda. And since you were knocking on the door, we'll go ahead and we're doing a webinar on ESD event detection.
I was wondering what all the alarms were.
And that's, I apologize. I forgot to tell you we're doing a webinar, so we're on live here. So what we're gonna do is, that's good that you came by, because like this is actually very good she comes by, because she manages our process.
Yes, she does.
We're not only a manufacturer of our static control products, we are also a user. We actually use this system, the EM Aware, which is SMP. What does SMP stand for?
Static Management Program.
And who manages that program here in our lab?
I
There
do.
you go. So what happens here, as many of you know, we make our own circuit boards. We manage our own process. And how long ago did you start working?
3 years.
3 years ago, right? And you jumped into this process, right?
Yeah, well, kind of.
We're kind of voluntold, right?
Yeah, I was kind of voluntold, but well, because they kept asking questions about why do they keep asking me about events and what's going on and this and that, and so once I wanted to know more, I was kind of like, okay,
It's
here
all
you go.
yours. It's all yours. Careful what you wish for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and you became the expert here. So one of the things is that when you first started with SMP, did you find that you had problems? Were you capturing data and then found that you solved them, or what was kind of your process when you first started?
Well, just kind of figuring out, especially with the EM aware, what was what, you know, and learning the static and the voltages and all that kind of thing. And so, yeah, there was, because I run a report every week and send it out. And so when I first took over, there was like hundreds and hundreds of events happening. And so through that, knowing that the events are happening, we can proceed with fixing them.
And I think part of one of the powerful things with SMP is when you track that data, you can actually put notes on when those alarms happen, what you did to fix them. And that traceability, right, goes back to how you fixed it and then seeing the problems go away, right? So another thing is, it was kind of funny that a couple of weeks ago, I think one of the things it also finds is when you have a new employee kind of work for you, right? How does that work out? I mean, what did that do? When you had a new employee being trained on the machine?
Okay, so on the machine, we have the big brother. So it has the sensor. If you come up to the conveyor and you're not plugged in, then it yells at you.
Right.
Okay, so.
She's yelled at me before.
Yes.
So
then at the workstation, it's also hard with new employees. We don't have the big brother, but you know, like their wrist straps, like making sure they know what to do if they're not making a contact, you know, lotion, a tighter wrist strap, you know, that sort of thing. And so you get a lot of alarms.
That's also, and really what that just goes to show us is that you can have the best equipment in the world, but if you're not properly trained and you don't have technical support like we do to call in and say, why are these alarms happening? What can we do to fix them? And a lot of times it's just having a new employee. There's a lot of rotation. People come in, they're not sure, they don't have their process set up. But what SMP does, they're able to document the problems, right?
Yes.
So this is truly, it's truly event detection at the highest level, right?
Right.
So utilizing the data to make the process better. That way, when our customers get the products, they work and they continue to work, right? All right, fantastic.
That is awesome.
So let's go to a couple more questions. Here's a good one, Will. Does humidity play a major factor in the EMI detecting events?
Absolutely, humidity plays a big factor. In a way, the more humidity in the air, the less static or friction are able to create more static and cause more events. Very simple way I always explain that part of it. Everybody, you know, has a dryer, right? So the more friction that causes, the dry air inside and the type of material cause a lot of friction. Well, what do we tend to do? We put little agents called bounce. Well, those things have moisture built into them. So we're making it more humid inside the area. What happens to the clothes? They don't zap you and all that. So humidity, the higher the humidity, will create less static. But in other cases, if you rely on humidity alone, you'll create corrosion, and that could be another maybe question for another meeting. But humidity, that's a very good question. Whoever asked that.
We did have one last question, and then again, we will get back to everybody. We'll make sure that we answer all your questions. But the last question is on the ESD Pro. What is the number? The question is, what is the number that's being shown on the ESD Pro?
There is no. That's the one.
This number right
This
here.
is a
counter. The counter.
It's just a counter, right? Exactly. So here's what we call a shaker. We're basically putting metal screws that rub inside a insulated plastic, and then we can set alarms, right? So this is one way to capture that you have events and have something that a known problem created and find out if it's happening.
Perfect. So just a basic counter. So if it says 12, it's 12 events that it captured.
That just tells you events. You really don't know the intensity. But like I said, another way, I don't think we did this yet,
We haven't done
but
that.
this is one way, one thing we could do. How do you protect your product from event detection? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, I'll do it with the EMI, the game changer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zero out, no events. I'm going to put this in the bag.
We use a lot of bags in our process, Brandon.
Yes.
Static shield.
Everything.
If you can hold this for me so
Yep,
it doesn't
I got
zip,
you. Good.
and we can still see the event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these both side by side. I'm going to zero them both out. And now with this, as you saw, I was able to make the event and see there's no, but it's capturing on this. See, so this, one thing's being shielded from events, the other is not. So that's another way you could test even your bags.
What about what about another type of material, like maybe like a pink poly?
The famous, right?
We see pink poly everywhere.
So this is kind of the famous bag. I want to put that in there. Let's see what happens. Let's see if that's able to shield it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is the fun part for me, being able to show what really happens with the equipment. So we're gonna do the same thing, and you can see.
So it's not shielding, it's not
It's not
protecting
shielding,
it.
it's going through the bag, and both of them are seeing the voltage. So that is another good way to really show that the type of packaging, even packaging material, events can go through and cause an ESD event.
So no pink poly, right, Miranda?
Bad.
Pink poly's bad. All right, so how about a tweezer? Let's do a tweezer test.
So let's do a tweezer test. So what we'll do is we will, again, charge this up, metal to metal. You see that? Both of them are seeing the energy. And as long as there's still static charge built up, metal to metal, you're going to cause that problem. So that's a good illustration of that. But what other tests do you want to see? We did the bag.
We did
which
the
a lot of
bag,
people like
so
to
the
see.
tweezer. I think we already did the
Yeah,
field
we
meter
kind
versus
of did the.
But one of the questions I had for you, Will, and before we wrap up, is I see you have 3 different types of tweezers here.
Right.
Explain that to me.
Well, there's 3. This is a cutting tweezer, but it's still metal to metal. I like to use just to illustrate metal to metal contact. This is a conductive tip tweezer, but we have to realize it has a little bit more resistance at the tip, so it slows down the transfer of energy. But in some cases, if it's too conductive, you can still pick up a charge. Not as intense, but something you'll see may not be as intense as a metal to metal. You can see the LEDs go all the way off the grid. One thing I've been finding is that this Teflon material seems to, because it's
Here, let me just show this. It's a Teflon. That way everybody can see exactly what this is here. It's a Teflon material here.
made by
Electronics. Okay.
and you can see I could charge this up, and so there's higher resistance, so there's no transfer of energy. It's something that we got to look at. Another thing would be part of your process is to introduce ionization. Like I said, the one thing that EM Aware does, I think what we managed to do is, in your process, I think that's one thing that we talked about when I came back, was that part of the process where you saw the static buildup come up and then there's metal to metal contact, right, is by putting an ionizer in front of the process, removing the problem with the static generation before there's any contact to the board. So ionization, using a more dissipated tool to lessen the resistance of the static voltage in the charge, the transfer of energy.
Or buy ESD tools.
Yeah, and
quality tools, right?
Absolutely, and that's something that we have to do, and that we do a really good job when we're on the field. Right now, one of our big problems is that we're not out there with our customers.
Yeah, our customers aren't even with their manufacturing in a lot of cases, right?
Exactly. So another challenge that we like to do is I was talking about this, is that we are, what do we like to say we do when we go out? We try to solve problems,
Problem
right?
solvers, yep.
So I would like to challenge some of our customers out there, because we can't physically go out and visit a lot of our customers now. Bring an application to us, email us, ask us, you have a problem, and what we'll do is maybe we'll do a webinar and we'll show how to fix that problem. I think that's what we could do. That's what we do.
Right.
Is we solve problems, and we are solution.
Yeah, I think that's a great challenge. Well, we had a customer not too long ago, a medical device manufacturer, who challenged us to come up with a cart grounding operation. We were able to do that. We did a webinar with the customer. We helped them solve that issue, and it worked out for everybody. So I think that's a great challenge, Will. I look forward to seeing a lot of those emails, because I think people will jump on that.
That's a great point. So if anybody wants to see how we monitor cards, we're actually dealing with S&P. That could be another good webinar. We had a challenge years ago about access control of a workbench. Yeah. And that's, if you find in our SCS website, on our YouTube channel, you'll find that we have a solution for that too. So please bring us some challenges, bring us some things that we can help fix,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great challenge. On your screen, you're going to see our contact information. I'm the national sales manager for SES, like we talked about earlier. Will being the Latin America sales manager. I also went ahead and put Miranda's contact information on there as well. Her email is there, so please email us, contact us. We greatly appreciate you spending the last half hour with us. If there's content that you want to see for our next webinar, please reach out to us as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and let Miranda in the webinar for us. So Miranda, why don't you tell us your famous words?
Stay grounded.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you for the time. We'll see everybody really soon. Thank you so much.